my computer, not on the web. I'm going to share my screen, and where are we?
Tony's back.
There it is. What's happening here? I'll flick this down. Boy, it's these are marvelous chapters. Oops, a daisy. And one of the things I want to say before we go into the study and sharing is that it'd be good to keep Isaiah 40 and 41 in your minds. And when we come to 43 and 44, maybe in a fortnight, you need to keep them all together, because you'll notice that there's a continuing theme of idols of the nations and the idols that Israel and Judah have hung on to, that they are being sort of brought to account, as it were, by the Lord, and a comparison between God and idols, which the idols come off horribly, some practical stuff about the futility of idols, and the problem that Israel, Judah were trusting in stuff like that, and not trusting in the Lord the way they should. And you get the theme of the servant of Yahweh starting to emerge afresh, even though it's been there back in the first 39 chapters of Isaiah. So we need to keep those things in mind, because, again, remember that Isaiah prophesied over many years, nothing like the extent of what he prophesied about. I mean, last time we saw that he was prophesying about John the Baptist, which is long way future, and his revelation went long past his time, and so. But at the same time, we need to recognise that someone put his prophecies into order, and they put them together for a reason, and that chapter 40, one follows 40 in our Bibles, but we don't know how many years was between those two. We see them straight ahead, but actually remember that they might have been significant, might have been 2, 5, 10 years between each other. And so he's actually revising, because they didn't have his notes, as it were. And so you will get a degree of repetition to remind them of the truth of the message that God had given to Isaiah. So they're just some thoughts. So we begin this new chapter with a description of my servant. And this and other verses in Isaiah raise the question, who's the servant Yahweh is talking about? Verse 6, you singular, in verse 6, it says, I, the Lord, have called you singular in righteousness. I will take hold of your singular hand. So he's talking about an individual. But is it an individual Jesus? Is it an individual Cyrus? Is it an individual collective noun like Israel and Jacob? So in other words, he's taking the nation as a collective body. Who could it be? Okay, so let's read those verses, and then let's go and share your thoughts on those questions that are listed above. Here is my servant whom I uphold and confirm. Both of those words apply in the Hebrew. It's interesting. He's not just upholding the servant, he's confirming him. Okay, there's an identification happening here, so that the servant not only is upheld, he's confirmed as my servant. My chosen one in whom my soul delights. I have sent or put, both are applicable, I understand, my spirit upon him. He will bring fair judgment or verdict to the nations. The actual Hebrew, the way it's written, I understand, is better translation verdict. That is, that in the heavenly courts of Yahweh, he has made a decision regarding Israel, regarding nations, regarding world rulers of the time and beyond, and he has given a verdict, a fair verdict. And that verdict that Yahweh has given, what you have here is that the Lord's verdict is being brought by this servant who's also a messenger. He does not cry out or shout or raise or lift. I should be lift up his voice. His voice is not heard in the street. He's not like a brawler. He doesn't break or shatter the crushed or bruised reed, or snuff or put out the faltering wick. Faithfully or truly, he presents the verdict of God. Now, it's interesting, in Hebrew, there are times where it's a little difficult to know the tense. Is it future? Is it present? Maybe is it perfect in the past? He will, or he does not grow faint or fail or falter. All of those words are tied together. He will or does not, he will not be crushed or is not maybe I'll put it, will, is not crushed or discouraged. So it's interesting that crushed and bruised, I didn't get a chance to check, but it'd be interesting to know. I suspect it's a different Hebrew word, but it's interesting. You've got a bit of a connection, haven't you? Until he has established fair judgment or the verdict on the earth or in the land. It can be either of those. It can be right across the earth, but it can be in the land of Israel or in the land surrounding Israel as well. And the coasts and islands are waiting for his law or his instruction. Okay, what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pause and sharing screen. Okay, we've looked at this now and we decided the servant of the Lord was particularly Jesus and that many of those qualities apply to us. I'm just summarising here. You, if you're watching this, can do some work on the qualities of the servant in 1-4. And then we applied most of those job descriptions to us. And And we loved his compassionate kindness and his willingness not to quit on broken people, but to encourage and restore them. And just like the Lord restored Simon Peter, rather than wiped him out because of his failure. So I just had a list of some of the things here. If you'd understanding of the words mercy is what pleased me, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the blameless, for the Son of Man is master of the Sabbath. He moved on from there and went to the synagogue. Now a man was there with a withered hand. They asked him, is it permitted to cure someone on the Sabbath day, hoping for something to charge him with? But he said to them, if any of you had one sheep and it fell down a hole in the Sabbath day, would he not get hold of it and lift it out? Now, a man is more important than sheep. So it follows that it is permitted on the Sabbath to do good. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched out his hand, was restored as sound as the other one. At this, the Pharisees went out and began to plot against him, discussing how to destroy him. Jesus knew this and withdrew from the district, and many followed him, and he cured them all, but warned them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Look, my servant whom I have chosen. And what do we start in 40 verse 1? 42 verse 1? My chosen, my chosen one, my beloved in whom my soul delights. Looks like 42 verse 1 here. I will send my spirit on him and he will present judgment to the nations. He will not brawl or cry out, and his voice is not heard in the streets. He will not break the crushed reed or snuff the faltering whip until he has made judgment victorious. In him the nations will put their hope. And they brought to him a blind and demoniac man, and he cured him, so the dumb man could speak and see. And so that demonstrated afresh what John began to tell us. That's John Sullivan, and others agreed. So you've got a scriptural confirmation, and back there in Isaiah, earlier part of Isaiah, I shall save you and the city from the king of Assyria's clutches. Defend the city for my sake and my servant David's sake. So David is called the servant of the Lord. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend, whom I've taken to myself from the remotest parts of the earth, summoned from countries far away, to whom I've said, you are my servant, I've chosen you, I have not rejected you. Now listen, Jacob, my servant, Israel, whom I have chosen. Remember these things, Jacob and Israel, since you are my servant. I formed you. You are my servant. I won't forget you. He said, you are my servant. After the ordeal, by his knowledge, this is, I think Israel will apply this to themselves, but we know Isaiah 53 has got a close connection with the ultimate servant. He will see the light and be content. By his knowledge, the upright one, my servant, will justify many by taking their guilt upon himself. But he called to mind Moses, and Moses was called his servant. Whereas he who saved them from the sea. And so there we go. Well, we're going to read verse 5 now. And then I invited you to share. We'll pause recording. Thus says Yahweh, who created the heavens and spread them out, who hammered into shape the earth and what comes from it, like its produce. It's the things in it, the living things and all the trees and plants and whatever, who gave breath to the people on it and spirit to those who walk on it. And the question is, what other scriptures do you know that are similar, or they have a similar message to this? And I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pause. Okay, and I'll share my screen. Well, we had some great answers there. And there's some of those, I've listed some. Yahweh laid in understanding spread out the heavens in 45 verse 12. You've got that there. 48:13. You've got that there. And you've got Isaiah 51 verses 13 to 16. And Isaiah 51, 16, we have Jeremiah 10 verse 12. And guys, for recording, we listed Isaiah 44:24, 45:18, Job 38, Genesis 1, Isaiah 40:25 and 26, Proverbs 8:3, Psalm 136 verses 1 to 9, a lot of Psalm 148, and Zechariah 12 verse 1. So those of you looking at this, there's lots of them you can look up, and as Marg said, you look through the whole Psalms and there's this theme of Creator God and how he did it all. Okay, now we come to the next set of questions, which is 6 and 7. I'm actually going to go.
Graham?
Yes, Yul?
You said Proverbs 8:3, it's Psalm 8:3.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yul. So it is Psalm 8 verse 3. So thank you. All right, we'll come to the next one, verses 6 and 7, and we'll look at the questions above. I, Yahweh, have called you singular in saving justice, salvation, in saving justice or salvation or righteousness. I will grasp, or I have grasped you by the hand and shaped you. I have made you a covenant of or for the people and a light to or for the nations. I understand the Hebrew, a covenant, and it doesn't say of or for, you've got to plug it in. To open the eyes of the blind, to free the captives from a prison or a dungeon, and those who live or sit in darkness from the dungeon or prison house. So you can see here, these words are different, but they are, we would call them synonyms, but they are a little bit different. And you may well have a different translation that you're looking at, which may bring out some of the variations of that. So here we're dealing with a single person, and the other question, if we're going to take this as Jesus, then how has Yahweh shaped Jesus? And can it apply to Cyrus And can it apply to Israel, Jesus, and us? Obviously, I think you can tie it. So there we go. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pause recording. I'm going to share screen. We had great discussions here, and we listed the wonderful promises of God to his chosen servant, a calling from God, a calling to him in a righteous way, taking hold of his hand, identifying with him like in family, keeping and making him to be a covenant. Now, this one became a real challenge to us to explain how an individual could be made a covenant and a light. And we looked to verse 7 to see that it was particularly related to Jesus, and parts could be related to us, but that basically Jesus carried the covenant in his blood, in his life, and he was given as a covenant in the sense that if you accept the covenant offering through the blood of his covenant, you came to him. But it was an interesting time spent on that. And just confirming from Luke 4:17 to 21, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, anointed me to bring news, proclaim liberty, sight to the blind, let the oppressed go free. This is from a later part of Isaiah, but it also does talk about proclaiming liberty to captives, sight to the blind, letting the oppressed go free, has some relationship to that. Okay, verse 8. I'm just going to go down a bit. Da, 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 da. And the next one is, I am Yahweh, that is my name. I will not yield a sign or give my glory to another, nor my honor or praise due to me to idols. And the question is, where do we read this theme? And what is its message? And I'm going to stop sharing while we move to discussion mode, and I'll be back. Recording, share screen, and where are we? Share screen. Okay, well, we had lots of talk about this, and from the all kinds of places. We went from Abraham to the name of God given Moses, and we went to Exodus 23 and 3 onwards from the 10 words or commandments. There was Ezekiel 36:22 and Isaiah 48:11, and it was clear that Yahweh was not prepared to give his glory to anyone, and particularly any honor and praise to idols, and he hates idolatry in every way, shape or form. So that's a very brief summary of what we said, but you who are looking at this online, do this Bible study yourself, and we will continue on next time. God bless you, and I'm stop sharing. And where are we? Stop.